for inviting me. Very privileged again to be asked. I think most of you know me. In the past, just so you know, understand it, I explained about myself. I used to be a fly fishing instructor with double-handed and single-handed rods. And fly dressing. I hold up guy in all three disciplines. I'm also an FFF, or as is now known as FFI, two-handed casting instructor and master casting instructor. Unfortunately, I can no longer fish rivers because my legs don't work. I was a policeman for many moons and had one kicking too many. And I have a series of spinal injuries from that. So, and the reason why I explain this is that when I'm tying, sometimes you'll see that my hand will all of a sudden stop, and it's because I've got no control of it, got no feeling in it, and it will actually sometimes my left hand it will quiver and won't grip, and my right hand actually goes into spasm. So I'm sat here with my hand up here like this for a minute or two, looking nonchalant, but it'll work eventually. I hope. It always has. I've noticed that there's been a lot of chat on the WhatsApp group that previously there was a discussion about initially about use of owl, and then there was a discussion about how you use owl, where you find owl, where you get owl. I'm a great believer in substitutes as opposed, and the stuff that you have has to be sighted. If you can see behind me here, I've got 4 walls of boxes and drawers, and everything is either pre-CITES or CITES certificated. It's just not worth it nowadays. I was a commercial fly tyer for a long time, so I used to do a lot of fly tying for everybody about the world. And the worst thing is trying to send stuff in the post without a copy of the CITES certificate. And I do a lot of classical salmon flies as well, so it's just about being sensible and preserving our pastime and supporting it, you know. Otherwise, it can cause all sorts of issues. The first pattern I'm going to tie you tonight is a pattern called the Concoction, which is an old Klaus Funner, which is a lake in just below on the boundaries of Snowdonia, in actual fact. And it was developed as a nuclear plant, believe it or not. And they're talking about restarting it, aren't they? I think. But it holds both brown and rainbow trout, and it was one of the first commercial rainbow trout lakes in the UK, other than Tune Blagden, which are obviously the first, and Traws-Fynydd and others started to develop, but Traws was one of the first. And they used to do a lot of international competitions on there, and this particular fly won an awful lot of competitions throughout Tune Blagden, but mainly on Traws. It was later used on Brannig, very good in a big wave. And really all it is, it's a variation of a green Peter. But it was designed by a guy called Arthur Owen. And just so you're aware, all these patterns I've actually taken from Mark Morgan's book, which is, if you can get hold of it, it's worth its weight in gold. And it's fly patterns for the rivers and lakes of Wales. Mock as a young boy, no longer with us, but it is an absolute beauty. But a lot of the patterns written in there are not strict to type. One I'm not tying tonight is the Usk Nailer. And I did the tying the Usk Nailer once on the Gwent Angling Society website, and it got a slating. And I don't know if you know, but the Usk Nailer was an early season pattern for the Usk, and it's very, very, very successful. And the one that I tied was an absolute slating, and I pointed out, because it wasn't fit and perfect, it was actually a copy of one of Leslie Peters' original. It was a guy who actually used to tie them for the Reverend Nailer. And a lot of people thought the Nailer was spelled Nailer, and it was actually spelled Naylor. And it was a minister, Church of Wales or Church of England minister, used to stay at the Summer Lodge of the Duke of Beaufort on the Usk. And I got one of these patterns that Leslie had tied, and it's very, very spidery, but besides the point, anyway, I'll go off track like I normally do. If I'm going to change cameras so you can actually stop looking at my ugly fizzog. Can everybody see that all right? Yeah, okay. I'm going to try and show you some of the workings that I'm doing with my hands here. Some of the times, I actually put my hands out there, my hands start to go, so I've got to bring them back in and cheat. Now, I've sent to Derek a list of all the patterns and all the materials that you can use, and if you can't get hold of them, suitable substitutes. The pattern in here is a concoction. This is what we're going to tie first off. And it's quite a simple pattern, but this has been tied with hen pheasant. And I'll show you how I do it with the hen pheasant in replacement of owl. Because I'm tying a few patterns with owl later, but I'll just stick with the hen pheasant now, just so you can see the system and utilize it on the other patterns if you can't get hold of it. Right, are there any questions before we start? I'll put my eyes on so I can see. Right, I'm tying all the hooks that I'm using tonight are various sizes of RX. It's the same pattern of hook, and it is. Look at that! I'll pick up the one that's. I always tie my flies on barbless hooks because I fish with them on the lakes and whatnot, and I don't lose any more fish for fishing barbless. And I think more and more people. The hook is actually an RX freshwater 561 barbless nymph hook. And the reason why I'm using a nymph hook, because I quite like the gauge on this, and I use this for a lot of my international patterns for the lakes. The silk for this is, I'm just using regular green whisper. I normally, those that see me tie quite often, I normally tie with white silk, and quite often put an underlayer of silver underneath so that the colors shine out. But I'm sticking strict with this instead of using white and silver or anything else. I'm just going to use the green silk, which it recommends. And well, before I do that, I'm just going to take it through a couple of times through a bit of wax. Now, a lot of people don't like the use of wax. They say, oh, it comes out through the fly. That's absolute bunkum. Two things that happens with wax is it gives the material some strength, and it also stops it sliding. So you can utilize it quite sensibly. So I've tied it on there. I've left the usual get for the head, and I'm using number 25 gold wire, right, of which I've got a piece here. And gold wire in. If you notice, I've tied it in up just behind the tying point, and I wind it on, and by holding it at an angle, it allows the thread to actually slide along, so you get touch and turn, so you get a good strength. And I take it up to the point of the fly. And this is one reason why I like using these particular hooks, is because the shank is a little bit longer, and I'm only talking about 2 or 3 millimeters. It's a little bit longer, and it allows you to utilize it quite nicely. Now, green Peter, you would normally tie with seal's fur, either of this color or darker, more olive color. But with the concoction, the ones that I've seen from the originals are always a little bit brighter. So this is seal's fur. If any of you got any questions that you want to ask whilst I'm trying, ask away. If not audio, then I've got the chat line up there, so you can ask any questions, and I can read down and answer them. Now, how many people have problems dubbing? Everybody? Nobody? All together? Yeah. Well, the first thing I do is, it all depends on the age of your seal's fur, and seal's fur is particularly difficult. So all I've done, I've just put it up to there and just done one twist. Now, one of the big things is actually the smoothness of your skin between the thumb and forefinger. And I wet that, and I just rub the saliva until it's almost gone on my fingers, which will, and you can feel it actually become a little tacky. So what that allows me to do then is, as soon as I start, it's got a grip on there. And I'm spreading it out as I tie it up. And then once it's on, I can push it forward. Now, I'm tying this on quite thick to start, because I'm going to brush the body out. I need a bit more. Take it up, one turn, and it's held onto there. And then you can see what you've got. So if you've got a great clump, what you can do is with your thumbnail, you can spread it out, move it about, move it up. Because you want, although you might want a tapered body, what you actually want to do is make sure you've got enough on there that it will grip itself, and the tying silk itself will also hold it on. So that's half the body, and it comes in 2 halves, and the next bit is red seal's fur. Now, a lot of the issues with dubbing with seal's fur is, if you've got real mature seal's fur, you need to stick it into the palm of your hand and rub it and break it up for a while, because if you don't, it's actually like trying to use hairs from a yard brush. It really is stiff and tight. Immature seal's hair is probably the best if you can get hold of it. I understand that seal's hair is becoming less and less available, and they're actually talking that at some point that again they might stop the sale of it. But the reason why I think people enjoy it so much is the fact that it's fairly translucent and it glows the color. As I said, I put this on fairly thick, and I can draw those few fibres back, but I've still got those couple of millimeters at the front. And before I stick my wire or my ribbon through it, what I'm going to do is just take this and brush this back a bit, because I want to give the fly life. And this is the joy of using seal's hair, is that you can see that it becomes really quite spiky, and you've got a lot of movement in it. Now, the choice, I've seen these with a palmed hackle and without a palmed hackle. If I'm using a palmed hackle, I wouldn't necessarily put the body in as thick as this, because it's the actual feathers that are going to, the barbs of the feathers are actually going to do the work for you. So I take over my wire. Now, traditionally, they say 5 to 7 turns. What I actually like to do with this is probably a lot more and do each section. So I might get 10 turns out of this in total, because what it does, it gives me good segmentation and it gives strength to the fly. And yeah, there's the 10th one. And I bring it down. I take my thread and I do 1 turn over, 2 turns over, 3 turns over. I pull the wire out at 90 degrees and I put a couple of locking turns in front. And then all I've got to do then is snap it off. All right, don't use scissors, because you will ruin your fine scissors.
Mark, was the rib clockwise or counterclockwise compared to your seal's fur?
Right. I always go the opposite way. So I see a lot of people, I actually tie with my silk going clockwise. So I've actually pulled the rib anti-clockwise, so it actually traps it down and it allows you to see it. Otherwise, what happens is it gets buried within there and you lose it. And if you want, you can now give this another brush out, and you should be able to see that rib quite defined, because the rib isn't just for strength and just for show, it's also there for you to be able to, for the fish to be able to see the fly and the track. Can you see the rib coming through there all right? Or if I mess with
lovely.
if I mess with this camera, I'll get shot. Right, I'm using a very light ginger, and the actual cape I've taken it from is this cape here. You can use it dark if you want. It's entirely up to you, but I found I quite like this pale sort of ginger, light ginger, and it recommends a light ginger with it. Now, what I'm doing now is, because this is a front hackle, I'm just pulling this out, where that hackle's going to be. And I'm going to take the waist off. Sorry, I'm doing it off camera and I didn't mean to. I'm taking the waist off there. And I cut that. I'll remove that, otherwise the camera will focus on that. And I hold that stem at the butt end at that point there. I want it tied on the side. And I'm doing 2 or 3 turns. And I'm going to pull that stem back and then wind up to the head. And then I can take off the last of that stalk or rachis. And I'm going to double back the hackle. And the way I do it whilst it's on there, can you see that all right? Or do I need to move this back a bit? Oh, there you go. Right. All I've done is hold it tight. I've got it on hackle pliers. I'm holding it upright and I just draw it back. I don't wet it. I just draw it back. And I do that then on each turn. And I'm looking at two or three turns of hackle if it doesn't keep breaking. There's one full turn. Two full turns. Three full turns. Come up. Pull it out 90 degrees. Once, twice, twice in front as locking turns. Put my scissors up. I'm just going to push forward with the V. Now my hackle's on, I'm just going to draw it down slightly, and I'm going to take the thread over the first couple of turnings of stalk. Did my thing move then? It did, didn't it? So now what I've built is a nice base for the wing. Now I'm going to I'm tying others with owl later, and I'll explain the difference, but this is light pheasant. And I'm going to use 2 double strips of pheasant. All right, I have an understrip and I then have the overstrip, because obviously being a green Peter, and by the shape of the pattern you can actually see that it's a sedge imitation, and it can either be fished on the point or it can be fished as the top dropper. So what I'm going to do is I'm just manipulating this. I want decent fibers, and those are no good. And if they're no good, get rid of them. Right, that's going to be one wing. That's going to be 2 wings. You do have a choice, of course, that you can do a folded wing. But I'll show you that technique later on one of the other flies. So I've got 2 slips on one side. And I'm going to take slips from the other side.
Sorry, Mark, what's the feather? Is it hen pheasant primary?
Right, this is a hen pheasant secondary.
Secondary, okay, great.
So, as opposed to a primary, which is, it's a bit lighter in colour and it's a bit softer. The truth is, I don't think it really matters which one you use, but it's just nice to, as long as you're comfortable. Now, what you notice is I'm marrying these and manipulating these a bit, because I don't want too thin a wing at the end. If I don't manipulate them, what will happen is I'll just end up quite simply with a spike of feather, and I don't particularly want that. So I'm going to take the first lot of slips. I'm using fly ties glue, which is a bit of spittle, on the end of my finger. And there's the first one. And then I'll take one from the other side. And I'm putting the longer shanks together, tip by tip. So can you see that all right? And quite simply is, I'm quite happy with that. I'll lift it up to there and I hold it on. Now this is the underwing. I lift up, pinch, loop, draw up and down and tighten up. And there I'm starting to get that nice roof wing over the top. Can you see that? I need to manipulate it slightly because it's moved a bit. Probably because I've got a camera in the way of my face. And now, same again. Take the second pair of slips. Put them together. Sorry, I'm just going to manipulate them, move them over. Hold it, turn, pinch, and loop, and draw up. Pinch, and loop, and draw up. What you then see is that you've got a second slip of wing on there, but you've got a thicker, more robust wing. Now, in practice, what I will try to avoid is cutting, which I did in practice, is actually cutting the silk off. Because I'm sure we've all done that a few times. So I'm just tightening that up. Now with that little stump in front, I'm just going to twist my silk. Just to tighten it up. Bring the silk round in front of that and then over it. And that will tighten it up so you get a nice shaped head. The one wing is just sitting slightly high. No, that's it. And that is your concoction. Let's finish it off. Snip him off. And I've just wetted my forefinger and thumb just so you can see how it'll sit when it's being pulled. What you want is to make sure you've got it level over the back, bringing it round, and you should see that from underneath as well. So you haven't got a wing kinked out to the left or right, or it's twisted. Any questions? Yeah.
Do you varnish the head, Mark?
Yeah, I do, but I'm not varnishing them now because
No, I just a question.
but I normally do with traditional patterns like this. I tend to use fly right, which is water based, and put that on, and then I might just dab it with a bit of there's nails after.
Okay.
All right. Or if I want a really big shiny head, but particularly with black-headed flies, which a lot of the traditional flies are, I'll varnish them 3 or 4 times. But that's the first one. You happy with that?
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Right, tonight. Nice meeting you all tonight. Only joking.
Oh, damn.
Right. The next 2 flies are confused with each other. And it's the first one is the Cochen-Las. Now, this is a pattern. Do you want to see me face, or are you just happy to look at the vice?
Prefer to look at the vice.
Yeah, I don't blame you. This is tied down. I'm going to tie this in the size 12. The thread is black silk. The body is black floss. And the hackle is Coch-Yn-Las. And the wing is dark coot. In this case, I've actually used water hen. Because I have got coot here, but there's very little difference between the two. The only issue I would say is with the fly, when a lot of people recognize water hen being used for spider patterns, and it's the lesser covert feathers which are being used just in one turn around the hackle. People and the secondaries and primaries sort of get ignored of the wings, the rest of the wings, because they're not used. Well, in days of old, they used absolutely everything, as we all know. And the only difficulty with this feather is it's a lovely dark color. Now, this is water hen, not coat, but it's very, very, very similar. It is finer, believe it or not. It really is gentle and finer than snipe. And I'll be using snipe later. And it's very, very frustrating. Now, the fly is actually tied very sparse and very thin. There's the one I tied as a practice. But what you'll notice with all these flies is that the wings sort of stick up. And that's a tying technique. And the reason why they stick up, I'm convinced is because they give movement and life to the fly as it's being pulled. And I know this looks a very, very simple pattern, which it is, but it's just, I just think it's nice not to forget the history of some of these patterns and these flies. So without further ado, I'm now using black silk. Sorry, I've just dropped my if you wonder what I'm doing here, I'm wrestling with me wax because I've just deliberately thrown it on the floor. Obviously you can't see all this off camera. It's just as well, actually, but it's not the best, prettiest sight, me bending over the end of my wheelchair and everything else. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my wax. This is homemade wax, I hasten to add. So if anybody wants the recipe, not a problem, I can supply that. tied on the black silk, locking turns. Now, here's something that the older of you might remember. Do you remember this? Purcell's marabou silk. As opposed to tying silk, this is actually a floss. And as you can see, it's quite thick. And this is what was used by a lot of people as black floss. You can, listen, you don't have to use this, but I'm sticking, because they're all traditional patterns, I'm sticking with old traditional ways. And the first thing I'm doing is I'm tying this on top. And if you notice, the waist I've taken up to the end of the original tying in point, and I'm holding it down. And bring it up. And this doesn't have a rib. So once again, what I'm doing is I'm bringing this anti-clockwise. And as I bring it, I rub it through my fingers. And what you'll see is it flattens out because this is twisted. But because I'm bringing it through anti-clockwise, it will untwist, but it will lay flat. Now, does everybody know what a Coch-Yn-Las feather is? If I explain, it is quite simply, it is a furnace which has a black center. And as you can see, the single feathers here, it has a black center and it also has black tips. All right, now if I pull that away from there, you can see, hopefully on there, black center, sort of reddish, hence the reason Coch, which is Welsh for red, with black tips. Whereas a furnace is just a regular feather with a black center. A dark ginger with a black center, and a lot of people aren't aware of that, and you've really got to search for these, certainly in genetic patterns, because otherwise they're an absolute nightmare. Now, I've picked out the feather that I'm going to tie here, which is this one here, which has got a nice color on it, and it's this hackle is going to be a little bit longer, and you have a choice that you can make. You can either tie these hackles on after the wing, or you tie the hackle on first. I tend to tie the hackle on first because it supports the wing and it helps you center the wing quite tidy. I'm tying it in exactly the same way as I did the last hackle. Couple of turns, pull back the stem, couple of more turns over, and again I'm going to double it. I'm deliberately looking for something that I've dropped now. Where did there it is? So I take it up, hold it up high, and just draw those fibers back. Now this isn't a genetic hackle. This is an old Chinese cape, which I dug out out of a bargain bin for about £3 a few years ago, and you can still get them. But as you can see, the hackle's quite long, and what it does, it creates that lovely movement in these waters. And for those of you who aren't aware of the waters I'm talking about, these are high mountain Llyns up in the middle of nowhere. There's not a tree in sight, or if there is, some actually the maps will show that they're surrounded by forest, and the forest is 6 inches high because it lays flat across the ground and good for tripping you up on. I'm just pulling these fibers down slightly, and I'm going to create the bed for the wing. So as you can see, you've got that split now in the wing, and it's coming down. If I turn it that way, can you see it a bit better?
Yeah.
Right, now I shall tie this with slips. Sorry, I'm just making sure I've got decent. And the second slip. Now, if you notice here, on this particular feather, although these are paired, those are really wanting to turn, aren't they? Which is, if I turn it on the side like that, you can see how it sort of bends out and round, which is absolutely fantastic for dry flies. But what I'm wanting to do is tie wet flies. So I'll probably go a bit higher there. And with my scissors and cut the slit. I'll just bring my slip to size. Wet my finger, put it on there, just lets you hold it. Pick up the other one. Point to point. So I'm doing this so the curve goes in.
Yeah.
Sorry, I keep taking it off screen because I'm useless. I'm just going to take a couple of fibers off that one so they match. Well, they did. And I can hold it up above. Get the right length, right position, lift, pinch, loop, and draw up. And as you can see, they want to sit up. And I think they sit up because they're such a soft hackle. Taking off the waist. underneath that lump there. And if they're not sat up as high as you want, there's nothing stopping you taking a turn around the back. Almost a little bit like Clyde style, you know? If I wet them, and you can see it comes together. Now on these wild hillocks and glens and lakes, mountain lakes, if I had to choose one fly preference, it would be black, and this would be it, because it's got all the makings of the heather fly and whatnot. But as you can see, there it is. That's twisted slightly over. There you go. Happy with that?
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
All right. Now, the fly that it's often confused with is a pattern that turns up in Price Tennant's book. And it's called the Cochen-Las. Sorry, that was the Cochen-Las. This is called the Coch-Yn-Las. So it's Coch as in red, C-O-C-H hyphen Y-N hyphen Las. And this is tied in a size 14, and this is entirely different from the pattern we've just tied. I'm just clearing my mess up. So, because I like to make a mess. My wife tells me often. Now, those of you that can't get hold of Purcell silk anymore, unfortunately, I've got lots of old stock and whatnot. The Garten have started producing a thread which is similar in every respect, both in colour and material type, and this is it. I think you can get it from Phil Dixon, is it? Phil Dixon? From one of the fly shops. I'm tying this in a size 14.
Oh, yeah, Fly Tying Boutique, I think was one you would have.
Fly type, that's it. That's it. I knew somebody would know. Thanks
Yeah,
for the
Phil
rescue.
Dixon's took over Fast Man, hasn't he?
Yeah, yeah. Did you get a phone call, Derek? Did you get a phone call from a guy called Mark about Camazan hooks?
No,
Thousands of them.
no,
I was offered a pile of hooks for sale
yeah,
from a guy that stopped tying commercially, and he asked because I had stuff off him before, and he's a distant relative of mine, to be honest, and I gave him your contact details for him to contact you.
but yeah, he hasn't contacted me yet.
Oh, well, he may have sold them in bulk then, because I thought you could have offered them to all the lads and you could have had thousands cheap or cheaper.
He would have put them in his drawer.
Do you think? That's a mighty big drawer he's got. Right, what I'm doing is I'm
I
just
know what he's like. He's like me.
well, I made the mistake once of saying to my missus, I said, "Oh, I need to get some more hooks." And then I was opening my hook drawer, and she said, you've got enough hooks there to last you a lifetime. Yeah, but they're not quite the hooks that I need. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I only buy hooks by the thousands, you can imagine.
Yeah. Right. With this, it actually has a dyed purple turkey tail. So I'm using some of my good turkey tail. Because I didn't have any. You can use light brown turkey tail, which is actually dyed purple. But what I do is that I leave this length of silk to do a rib. Can you see that there?
Yeah.
Or alternatively, what I can do is double it, create a dubbing loop, and bring that all the way down to the bottom. Right, again to the hook, and just stick that out of the way. All right, because what I'm going to do is twist that and use that as a rib, just to give the fly strength. Now, the hackle with this is quite interesting, but I'm just taking 2 or 3 fibers from this and pulling it away. Now, just so you know, that's the original Purcell's Marabou, and that's the actual floss, which can also give the similar effect to this. But what I'm doing is I'm just going to cut off the tips. I've cut the tips off so it gives me more strength, and put it in the length of the body and tie it on. Take my hackle pliers. I don't need them here. Now, what I tend to do with this turkey is just twist it ever so slightly, which again gives it strength. It's not a biot, so it doesn't matter if you twist it. The idea is that you're recreating sort of that heron hurl body, but in purple. Who let the dog out? Oof, oof. You haven't heard mine yet. Go. Now take that out of there. Just had that in my hand. What am I done with it? There it is. And I put these in my hackle pliers and use it like a twister. Oh, there's an old face I see with a cigar in its fizzog.
Hello there, how are you?
All right, mate. How are you?
Yeah, struggling on, struggling on.
And again, I'm bringing this anti-clockwise, just so it holds it quite nicely and gives the fly strength. Right, now we come to the interesting bit. The hackle on this is a rusty blue dun, or a rusty dun. Now, a lot of people haven't got a clue what a rusty dun is. And all it is a blue dun. And if you look at this, I'm going to take one feather off here for the hackle. What you can see is, hopefully, is like a freckle in it. Can you see that well enough or no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know whether the camera shows it up enough or...
Put your hand behind. Yeah.
Right. There's it's almost like a gold freckle, and that's a rusty blue dun, rarer than hen's teeth, and this is genetic. So what you've got to do is actually try and find a supply that you can get hold of them, and because my experience has shown me that a lot of people say they can deliver things that they can't, which is a bit disappointing. Now, just so you are, I'll tie in the hackle in a different way. I'm going to reverse the hackle and tie it in by the tip end. But what I do is I make sure I go over a couple of turns of hackle, or the barbules. And what this does is this gives more form to the hackle, in the fact, whereas the other one was I want it to work spidery, this one will actually make it more stiffer, because you've got shorter hackles supporting the longer hackles. Still doubling it. So you can see now that sort of stands out a bit more bulky, doesn't it? And the wing for this is, again, slips of water hen, which I've deliberately put back out of the way. But this time, I'm actually going to do it differently, in the fact I'm going to use a single feather. And I think you may have seen me do this with teal before, haven't you? So what I'm doing is I'm going to use, I want quite a, so my wing is going to be a quarter width of what I'm doing here. But the first thing I want to do is marry up the tips as best I can, which you can see I'm holding it out from the rakis, and the tips are fairly even now. And I'll take that, and because I'm brave, I'll push it away. Right, and I'm left with a mess. No, I'm left with these bits here. All right. Now you can see that there's a darker side and a lighter side. It matters not, because what I'm going to do is fold it into itself. And the first thing I do is I fold in a quarter with that thumb there. Then I fold in a quarter there, and then I lift my thumb and forefinger up. Hang on, he's wanting to go off and do his own thing. And then I fold it in half again over itself. There. And it is, with these particular fibres, it is a peg. But you've got them like that now. So you've made 4 strips of feather together. So you've actually brought it all together as you want it. Now I'm going to wet it off camera, because there's no way I'll bend down to get my head down to in front of the camera. And I want it just a tad longer than the actual hook. Pinch, loop, draw up. If you don't, and then watch your silk break, which is a wonderful thing. It makes you feel so good. And I'm bringing that up, I'm holding that on, because I had enough to tie it on. Oh, absolutely marvellous. It happens to us all. And if you laugh too loud, I wish it happens to you again.
Well rescued.
Well,
Yeah.
it's showing you what you can then do to put things right. Do you use these as threaders? The
Yeah.
floss.
Yeah, the drill there.
Something similar.
Well, Renzetti sell them at about £3 for 10, and you can get a box full for about £1 from the chemist.
Chemist.
Yeah,
Pharmacy.
the dental floss threaders they are.
Yeah. Or you
Uh-huh.
could probably get them even cheaper off the internet.
Dental floss threaders. You learn something every day.
Well, it's why you're here.
Every day.
Well, you see, so you pull it through there. Ta-da! I'm just going to wax this thread again, because I can't wait for it to snap again.
And using them, it doesn't damage the ceramic tip.
Well, no, well, these are this is actually a Renzetti one, which has got a ruby eye on it. I've got some I've been using for 30 years. Now, as I look at this, I can see it's pulled over to my side. So a tip for you to do is you can actually pick the whole lot up and move it over. So I'm holding the wing in between thumb and forefinger, holding up the waist and moving it over. Oh, that was nice. So I'll move the ring, and then you can see the wings down the centre, almost. And I can tell you why it doesn't go exactly down the centre is because where the camera is, I can't get my hands over properly enough. I feel like a bloody Dalek with this camera in front of my face. That's off the waist. And again, you can see with this particular wing, it sticks up a little bit. this is also, as well as a good early season fly for the lakes, is also a very good fly for the river, and had particular fame, I think you find, on the river Irfon, I think it was. If you can't get water hen, there's nothing to stop you using teal either. Regular teal feathers. Not the green, but the other one. All right. Is everybody suitably bored?
You're doing a grand job.
Sorry?
You're doing a grand job.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So, well, these are all techniques, and people just used to use things that were available to them, and they still have and had great success. So why not? I'm a bit soft like that. I don't like to see the old things die out, you know. Now, there's two patterns here, which the Usk purple. Do you want to see that? No different really from the Usk and right, I'll do that first. And I'm tying these all as wet flies. Same silk. And I'm tying this. In fact, before I do that, because that'll throw me out of sync otherwise, I'm now going to do another grouse fly, which is worked everywhere, which is called the York Special, and it later became known as Yorkies, and everybody thought it was following the chocolate Yorkie bar. Because the guy who developed it, and nobody can remember his name, but remembers that he used to travel all around the UK as a salesman selling these wares, and he developed this fly called the York Special. Now everybody presumes his surname is York, might be an idea, and that's somewhere right where he might have come from. But again, it's a very simple pattern tied on a size 10. Black silk. And this has a palmed hackle as well as a front hackle. This, you can put a wing in this, but it doesn't have any, basically. It's a tag of red silk. Now, a lot of people, did you hear my phone? Siri burst into life then. Now, originally, a tag means that it normally means that it has a silver, but it's part of a butt. You have a silver or gold end of the fly, and it forms part of the tag, which stops all the material sliding off. And then you'd have a red floss. Whereas I know for a fact that this particular fly, when it says red butt, what is it actually talking? Sorry, red tag. It's actually talking of that, right? And that's also a tag. Although it's a tail, it's referred to as a tag, and it's just red wool. Simple, isn't it? Now, the body is black wool, and I'm using Berlin wool. which is 3-ply. If you can't get all the which is 2-ply. If you can't get all the Berlin wool, then just get ordinary wool and pull a couple of plies out. It's simple as that. Or you can use floss, or you can use whatever you want, provided it's black. It has a rib of gold wire, size 25. And again, because it's 2-ply, what you'll see is it smooths itself out quite nicely as I bring it through, and it loses its twist. And that's why I like to use the Berlin wool. Besides, that's what I'm used to with classical flies. Bring it up, 2 turns on, tie on, couple of turns in front as locking turns, and remove the waist. Now, the first hackle, you know, I showed you the Coch-Yn-Las earlier. I've also got it in a genetic form somewhere. Oh, right there. That's Chinese regular wildcat, and that is a genetic type, which is a lot thinner, thinner rachis, more consistent. And I use those for the palmering because it is stiffer and it doesn't take up as much room. So I've got one of each here. Now I want this to go thick to thin, although it'd be fairly consistent because it's a genetic hackle. Wind it on, push that bit of hackle back so it doesn't pull out. Get rid of that waste. If I had fingers that still worked, I'd probably wrap this on by hand. I've not doubled it, and I'm doing one full turn at that point, and then open turns all the way down. Now, the more turns you do, the bushier it'll be. So I'm on 4, 5, 6, and bring it round. And then, because I've wound it away from myself, that's exactly what I'm going to do again with the rib, because then it's winding in the opposite way to the palmer hackle and it ties it in beautifully. Bring it through, and as you can see, because you're bringing it through the opposite way, none of those hackles are actually getting trapped, are they? Oh, if I move that, you might be able to see what I was doing. Sorry. Bring it through to the front. Lift up, 1 turn, 2, 3, couple of locking turns in front, come up from behind it, keep it taut, and move it until it breaks off, all tickety-boom. Now, I'm now taking my head hackle, which I want to come all the way down to the point. So I'm using a bit bigger feather. Can remove. He says, I can remove that. Bring this up. And if you think of the Blagden green tag, which I think you tied the other week, didn't you, Derek?
Yeah,
You can see how similar this fly is. Now again, I'm going to tie this in tip first. Needless to say, this fly is fished on the bob. And on the three or four fly cast, that basically means just on the top dropper. Hold up your head.
Very Zulu-y, isn't it?
Oh yeah, but you imagine you've got a heather fly coming off and all sorts. You know, I mean they were utilizing the materials that were easily available to them, because a lot of these feathers used to come from bantams, which was a Welsh tradition of showing the bantams and getting the eggs from them and everything else. And the birds weren't actually killed for the feathers; they were plucked and at a particular time of the year, not or quite often they molted. But there it is. It's difficult to emphasise how nice it looks, but it is different. But it's known as a York special. And I sometimes think there's nothing new in fly tying. All the techniques are the same. We just get new materials and we think, oh, this is the new wonderful thing. And quite often I'll just fish with these old style flies, and away we go. I mean, Glyn Williams, who's going to move back down soon, I think, is also a great believer. We always talk to each other quite often, and we always say to them, not the rocks, you know, not allowed in North Wales, you know, not the rocks. Right, so that's that one. Are there any questions? Does anybody need a comfort break or anything like that, or have I bored you to death?
No, it's good.
Right, I'm going to do let me get rid of that. That. I was going to do the I just had it. And it disappeared on me. Sorry. Right. I'm now going to do a pattern called the dark blue. And it's an early season husk pattern, but it's also it's very good for early season on the hills. So I'm digging out the materials here now. This is, I think it's an impersonation really of a iron blue dun, and it really is a simple pattern. I'm tying it on a size 14, It's black silk. There's nothing difficult about this. I think it's black silk. Let me just check, because it might be purple silk. No, black tyne silk. But it actually, one of the very popular feathers in Wales, which is often referred to, and a lot of people don't really know what it is Andalusian. Any of you heard of it? Dark Andalusian. It's almost black. It's a very dark dun, and it is a lovely feather. And I've got, if I show you, that is dark Andalusian there in a, it's actually genetic cake, but it's sort of got a grey centre with dark outside, and it's almost black. I've got another one here, which is a genetic one, which they really are dark, but as you go deeper in, they get lighter, you know. But it really is a lot of the old patterns are actually built on it, and this is a Andalusian hen, which again is very dark. A lot of people, it looks like black on there, but it's not. It's a dark blue dun. If you can get a hold of it or get a breeder to do it, I got this one from Ireland, or it's from the Irish lads that came to the fly for a couple of years ago, and I never seen quality as good as this for hen feathers, and they're not that expensive for what they are. So there is
Mark,
no.
is it breeding or is it just a colouring? Because I've got a blue Aleutian, but I've never really seen another one. First time I've seen three together.
Well, there might be a couple more than that.
You lucky bugger.
I've got some in saddles as well. I asked Sharon Hackles, oh God, what's her name?
Christine?
Christine. And she actually got some birds in and started breeding them. Right, that's where the genetic one comes from. They really are. If you look at all the old books, when they talk about dark blue dun, they actually mean Andalusian.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot, when the stuff local to your area, where you've still got the history being passed on, it's where you actually find out what's happening and what it actually means. And I think that's important, that history isn't lost. I'll probably sound like an old bore, but
No, I've got an original blue Aleutian, and I've never seen another one, so I treasure mine.
yeah. Well, I've got a guy died, and his this is going back 35, 40 years ago, and his wife, no, 30 years ago, his wife gave his fly tying stuff to a friend of mine who is a river keeper, or was a river keeper on the Kennet, and he hates fishing. He's finished with it all now. He's retired now, rich man in Marlborough now. But he turned around and said, "Listen, she's given me all this stuff." He said, "I don't know half of what this is there." He said, "Would you like it?" And I said, "Well," I said, if it's anything of value, I'll give you some money for it." And he said, "No, she doesn't want anything to do with it. She hated the fly tying. It used to make her rich. She gave it to me," and he said, "I know you'd like it." And I said, "Well, what do you mean I know?" He said, "Well, have a look inside." Now, I opened up this like tin box, this biscuit box. And in there was a collection of all hand-picked feathers from vineyards, all labelled from honey blue done, honey rusty done, and it was all the old names. It had cuckoo feathers in there, all sorts. And I've still got it there now. It's got to be worth £1,000 on its own, right? Because it's all the old natural dyes that they use. So there's dye feathers in there as well. But I only use them as a reference. They're fantastic. I may let somebody see it someday. Right. Well, the body on this is mole. Quite simply. Because it's black silk, you're not worried about putting too thin a body on the mole. But you still don't want it thick and knotty. So what I'm doing is, as I spin it on, I'm spreading it out with my thumbnail. No tail on this fly. Now, I started to talk about it earlier. It's up to you whether you put your hackle on before your wing or after it. I always prefer to put the hackle on last. Sorry, I always prefer to put the hackle on first, so the wing can actually set within it, so it doesn't cause the fly to sort of canter about and whatnot. Because this is a wet fly pattern, not just for lakes but also for the river. Very good early season. But what it allows you to do is that when you pull it, the fly won't spin because the wing is kept steady. Again, doubling it because it's going to be a wet fly. Now, a little secret is, rather than going with your scissors, if you now twist that, it'll snap off at where the silk touches it. You're making me hungry there, eating that sandwich. Putting the base, my wing, and here again, we're back to our old favourites of, and I'm going to put 2 wing slips in. I may have to do it 4, but you don't want them too wide. Now, what I've done is putting these together there, tip to tip. Sorry, I'm just these are a real pain in the backside. To take control and wet them. That's better. If you never tie with water, hen, avoid it like the plague. Pinch and loop. There we go. And there it is. Again, quite slim, but they work. The same as spiders. And when I was on the river, I used to fish these upstream as well as downstream. And when you fish these, you can just if you fish them upstream, you can also just grease them up, and they're just like stillborn flies. There's so much you can do with these old patterns. Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Right. Now, I've got 3 patterns to finish on. All right. And I thought these were quite interesting because one, I've had to practice for days to pronounce the name. And I'm sorry, I'm moving about here now. Much to my daughter's frustration, where she said, well, most people won't know what you're saying anyway, which I don't believe. So I think what she was implying was I could make it up as I went along, but on the WhatsApp group, there was a lot of discussion about owl and the use of owl. You can get owl simply by looking on the sides of the roads, particularly after it's been raining. Because one of the things an owl does, which a lot of people aren't aware of, is if it sees its own reflection, it attacks it because it thinks it's another owl on its patch. And that's where they tend to come down low onto, because it sees a reflection in the moonlight, and vehicles hit it. Certainly on darker roads. This is barn owl. If you know where a barn owl is nesting, once they've all fledged and whatnot, if you go there, you'll find loads of feathers around the base of the box and whatnot, or roadkill. But if you can only get one feather, don't throw it away. It's worth its weight in gold. But it's all tickety-boo. Now for the bit that I practice. Where's my piece of paper with it all written on? Right. Are any of you Welsh speakers? Anybody there Welsh? Oh, great. I can make it up as I go along. Right. This is Rhwyfwyr Cochddu. And it's a Rhwyfwyr Cochddu. And it's Rhwyfwyr Mawr Cochddu. And it's a Cochddu that I'm doing first. I'm impressed by that, aren't you, boys? Obviously not. Right. So they're all sedge patterns, and all these patterns evolve from Blaenau area. So right up there in North Wales, not logs now. You can't fish here. It's my fishing here, And the wool for these flies, and I know when I sent Derek this, he probably had a giggle at this, is the hair taken from the scrotum of a black sheep. Now, I'm sure you've all got bags of this at home, right? You do not need to take up the dangerous task, right, of going out there chasing black rams for their scrotum bits. I wouldn't recommend it. It's pretty dangerous. But what you may not know is black sheep aren't actually black. They're brown. They're really dark brown. And you can mix your own by using a dark brown wool mix with claret, or black with claret, right, with the dark claret, and you end up with this, which is this sort of very dark fiery brown. Now, I should have carded this, and I haven't. I've mixed it in my mixer, so I'll try and avoid the lumps in it, but that's the color you're looking for. I don't know whether you can see it or not, but it's interesting. And I've made that out of merino wool. I can see everybody thinking, I ain't chasing sheep up any mountain. Very lovely thing too. Is Hailey with you today? Peter Hailey there?
No, Pete's not on tonight for some reason.
He's in Sicily on vacation.
Sorry?
He's in Sicily on vacation.
Is he?
Yeah,
He's not allowed holidays.
He's in Venice. He went to Venice on Monday.
Good God. Right, the palmatine is this, which I think is a lovely looking, what I would call traditional pattern on the size 10. All right. It has an underwing on it, and it has a folded wing over the top of that. So first things off is black silk, which I'm going to wax. And the three patterns I'm tying are all variants of this. But each variant or each pattern has its own attributes. Now, this was traditionally fished, and it's known as the big sedge. It has a rib of gold wire, and this was traditionally fished late evenings into the dark. I'm just so you can see, what I'm doing is I'm teasing out this. I should have carded this. As you can see, it's quite a nice tight dub. Push it up, one turn, and then dub again and just tighten it up. And you can give it a twist over each turn. Again, rib on, anti-clockwise. I quite like to put quite a tight rib into this just to give it the segmentation that a natural insect has. Now, the inner wing or the underwing is partridge tail feather fibers. And what you'll need a fair few of these just to hold it up. But what you need to do is draw them out and bring the points together. And you can see as you do the kick up, which will actually hold up the oval wing quite nicely. Is that camera angle all right, Derek?
Yeah, it's fine, Mark.
You'd say anything to me, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Right, and I'm taking fibers from the other side as well and putting some more in. You could, if you wanted, leave the wing at that. Now, I don't know if any of you have actually seen the structure of an owl wing, but what it is, a lot of people don't know this. The owl wing, the owl feather has hairs on the outside. If you see on this field, it's all hairy and fluffy. And that's why the owl can actually move through the air without making any noise whatsoever, right? Because this dulls the wisp of the wind over the feather. On that side, you can see it's flat. Now, with this wing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a folded wing. This is not easy material to use, trust me, right? And this larger sedge is a little bit darker, sorry, because I need the lighter one for later. So there. And although it looks like it marries really easily, it don't. So there you can see I put the points together. Right? And what I'm going to do is fold a quarter in and fold the other side in. And then I'm going to fold it in half. And that's what you end up with. And I don't know, can you see the hairs on that now? No? Yeah. Right. And as you can see, it naturally, and I'm trying to twist, it starts to roof, doesn't it? It starts to split naturally. And all you do is push that up and over the underwing, pinch and loop and draw up, pinch and loop and secure, another couple of turns, and the wing is on there. And I think it creates a really beautiful roofed wing. And whereas with mallard, you quite often have to cut it to give it that shape. With this, you don't. And the last bit is the hackle, which I actually think really makes a fly. Now, I'm just cutting off the waist here. I'm tidying up that head. Now, can I point out that these feathers I'm using are over 40 years old? And I was given them in a collection from Brian Fabini. I don't know if any of you remember Brian Fabini. He died many moons ago. Brian actually did a lot of the times in Joe Bates's book, The Atlantic Salmon Fly. Out of such a character, absolute rogue. Now, if I show you the hackler's brown partridge, and everybody goes to this end for the brown partridge. Sorry, everybody goes this end for the brown partridge like ours. But for this particular fly, you can start to utilize these ones right on the tail. They're super soft. They are lovely to use, but before you use them, remove the plumescence or the fluffy bit, and take hold of the point. So take hold of the point and pull the fibers down. Pinch that on. There. Couple of turns. Pull the waist back. So that's tied in. Fold it back and wind it on. Now, what you notice is the technique I'm using here is I'm pushing it round with my finger, and that stops you snapping it on. You can guarantee now that will snap now. Go through round. The rachis is turning, or the stalk's turning. Round, bring it through. And up. Tie off. And form a head. When you're using folded owl like we have now, you're always going to have a big head. But I don't think that matters with this fly. The idea is it's going to be fished either on the point on its own, and be skittered about on the top, or you're going to have it as a bob fly on the dressing of 2, 3, 4 flies to work the different levels. And to me, and this is really what, because I did think about tying a pile of salmon flies tonight, but I think this to me looks fishy. And that's it.
That's going to have a lot of movement.
It will have a lot of movement, create a lot of wake. And as you know, on these hill locks, when you're doubling that across, that's what fish are looking for. They're looking for insects in distress. And I just think it looks nice. And there's and you haven't had to chase a black ram around the mountains to get the materials either. I've saved you that problem.
Mark, it looked very similar to the Festinard flies.
Absolutely. And I think some of the Festinard flies are similar to these.
Very, especially with the owl and the rams, yeah.
Because this is original from Blind Festinard area anyway.
Yeah.
But there you go.
Very good.
Right. Now, the one I'm not going to tell you is the oh God, how do you spell it? God, I've got to get me phonetic guess there, crib now. Rhwyfwyr Cochddu Bach, which is exactly the same, but it's a small sedge. That's making you laugh, isn't it? I could see that. But what I am going to do is the last two is the Coch-Yn-Las Telson, which is red, black, teal wing sedge. All right, and that's quite interesting. It's similar tines right up to the end, right? Where you're actually going to put a teal wing over the top rather than an owl. Okay, and I'll show you the technique that I use for that particular fly. So, and I'm tying that again on a size 10. Oh, that's size 10. There we go.
Yeah, more rain, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's sunny every day. The birds are enjoying the wet wind
That's
today.
good again, isn't it? How's that? I'll tell you what, Derek, you always get your money's worth out of me, don't you?
Always enjoy what you tying, Mark.
You so smooth talking, bugger. You must have been in the engineers.
Yeah.
So, same again. So no different from before. Same wool, same rib, same weight. And surprise, surprise, same underwing. If I explain as well with the underwing, rather than use the pure sort of cinnamon tail bits, I've actually used the bits with the mulling on the end. Because I like that continued look, you know. Here's a question for you. Do you find it easier seeing it with the camera as I tie it, or would you rather see it opposite?
You do it.
Sorry?
As you do it, looks very good.
Because I've spent a lot of time with doing demos like this, and doing videos, because I always think it's a completely different perspective from people who are tying when you're looking at them, as opposed to seeing it from the view of the tire. It's a pain in the backside to tie around, mind.
Well, it's a hell of a big camera you got, isn't it?
Sorry?
That's a big camera.
Well, I do a lot of tying. Somebody found that funny. Right, so now we've come to this bit. Now's the important bit, all right? Now, tail flank feather. You can put them on as slips if you like, but what I tend to do is look for those tail feathers that are reasonably balanced through the center. See that? That's fairly balanced, isn't it? Not completely balanced, but fairly balanced. So all I'm going to do now is take the center out. So there's the center out. See? Just taking the center out. And then I wet it. I just draw it between my silky lips. And then that allows me to lift it over the top of that and hold it over. Pinch and loop and draw up. Pinch and loop. Pinch and loop and draw up. And there is my oval wing. Now, one, because it's likes to do this, is twisted. So take it off. And because it's still on the rakish, you can still manipulate it the way you want. Once it's off there, you find it a bit difficult. And the reason why they put the tail on is to fish it from mid-afternoon to early evening. And I can understand that, because I think it'd be more visible then. And then the last thing we need to do is, once again, sorry, I'm just preparing a feather. So I'll take that out there. Wind this on. And build up the head. Gosh, that's not a head, that's a bloody current. Can you see that bit of teal coming through it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, almost the same fly, but it gives it a different characteristic altogether, I think. And lastly, again, a change on the original pattern is called the I've got it right. Hang on, I can say this now. I'm going back to my Welsh speaking. It's Rhwyfwyr Cochddu. God, I've impressed myself that. Which is a ringed sedge. So again, it's the same fly, but this time it's tied on a size 12. And it's green ringed because that's the colour of the rib. Now, what I've used for the rib, keeping it traditional, is Purcell's floss, silk floss. Well, I've had to dig deep to find all these things.
Mark,
Yeah.
have you ever read Emery Evans's book on the pest in the odd flies?
Yeah, I've got it.
I can
Very
take-
interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's great that there's a Welshman who's done also in Welsh.
Yes, I haven't got that one.
The whole point is that
It's the history.
it's not like the history die, and a lot of the feathers were easily available.
Yeah.
They used to use what was local, from bronze mallard, from mallard, teal, and you got lots of teal up on the mountains there, all sorts of things, and it really is very, very good. But I'm sure that he took a lot of his patterns from Morgan's book, which is, I think, was first published about 50 years ago, wasn't it, Derek?
It might have been longer than that, Mark.
Yeah, yeah. I know it's rarer than hen's teeth, but it's rare. But I collect old books as well. You see, I've got something that for our American friends might interest them. I've got the original letters from Gordon, who invented the quill Gordon, with Scouse. All the original letters. It was published as a book. That's very interesting. One, as you know, if you've seen me before, I always go on about D.W. Dunn as well, Sunshine and the Dry Fly, which is he castigates Holford a great deal over dry flies and his lack of understanding of how they appear to the fish.
I tied those ones you're talking about with the butts in blue, gold, and green, and fished them on Vernwy.
Yeah,
They were successful.
I think people forget that the reason why they use these patterns was because although we fish as a sport, to them it was a meal. And a lot of these old slate quarrymen used to go up on the mountains, not just for a break, but also for some sustenance. Because they didn't have two pins to rub together, you know. Bit like us poor valley folk in South Wales. Nobody loves us anymore. I shall go back out into my cave tonight and cuddle up.
Just make sure you don't drive over 20 miles an hour.
Don't go there. I think it's a very sensible idea.
The sarcasm in your voice is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm not sarcastic. Good God, no. The fact that I was overtaken by a kiddie on a truck pedal bike the other day got nothing to do with it. Now, I've twisted this floss so it doesn't flatten out too much. And what it does, it gives a nice shine, which will matter diddly squat once it's wet. But the art of most fly ties is to catch the angler before they catch the fish. But I actually thought about tying this. If I would modernize this, I'd do the rib with a more fluorescent green. And it would look just as nice. Underwing is the same now. Have any of you read Parth's book, Parth's and Kerry's book on the wild lakes of, or the wild Llyns of Wales?
Yeah. I got it about 2 weeks ago.
He's I think he's put together really well. You know, he gave me as a gift a print he did. He's after 100 different trout from 100 different Llyns, and he was up to 80. And he said, before, in case he pegs it, he's going to print this one out first. And he printed it out. I mean, he acts like a 16-year-old, but people forget he's in his 70s. He's reached 70. Do you know what I mean? But in his head he's still 16, and he's bobbing up and about these mountains. But he's taken a photograph of every trout or a trout from every llyn and lake in Wales, or 80 of them so far. And the difference in the fish, you can actually recognise what llyn they're from, because they go from buttery yellow to almost black. Right, now, this is a lighter owl, and it's still the same owl, but it's lighter towards the base. And again, the same technique with this is bolt the points together, or straighten out the points in a quarter, fold in half, and you don't realise how hard that is to do with no feeling in your hands. Turn it over. Just relax it a bit and it goes over the top. Pinch and loop, draw up. Pinch and loop, draw up. Well, I've twisted that. And don't worry, if something goes wrong, go back and sort it. Because all it will do will spin. Now I'm looking at, what I can see is three lots of fibre on one side, and there's one slip on the other. See there? So what I'm going to do is separate them, and I might have to do that off camera. There we go. And then all we do is just finish it off with just preparing a hackle feather here, so double it back. remove the waste. Actually, another simple way is just to spin it. And it won't break off where you want it to, so you're going to go back in with the scissors anyway. I do like a nice big head on a sedge pattern though. Right, I've just wet it all, bring it all in line, and there you go. I think it's a nice little pattern, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed it. Should I come back? Should
Very
I
good.
remind
Thank you very much,
what I
Mark.
look like
Yeah.
again?
Thank you very much. Yep, really good.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark.
Hang on. Are there any questions? Are there any questions? This is what I mean about a camera being in front of your head.
One of the best demos I've seen. Thank you very much.
Sorry? Did you find it worthwhile or no?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
very good,
yeah.
Mark. Thank you.
Yep.
Well, that's probably my last flying demo I'll do. It's getting harder and harder with this hand now. And it's just too difficult to do it properly and professionally as I like. It's taken me 3 days of practice to get up to that. So I thank you for your support and I wish you all very well.
And you, Mark, you take care.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you,
Well,
Mark.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
Absolutely fabulous.
Thank you.
Cheers, Mark.
Thanks,
All right,
Derek.
Derek, you happy with that?
Yeah, tidy.
It's a bit different, isn't it?
Well, some of the lads like Andrew Ayres, he's just been fishing Llyn.
Yeah.
I forgot to ask him, has he used any of those flies up there?
Yeah, yeah. Well, they do work, and you can fish them in rivers. I design my own March Brown patterns, you know, and everybody was going out saying, "Oh, we're not catching anything. The conditions aren't right." And when I was on the river, Mike, my son, and I would go out and Paul Mason. I mean, he'd have a shovel, right? And they're just slight variations to the flies.
That work.
You've got to view the originals and look at them and think, well, how can I make that better? What can I change? You know, and it's subtle differences. It's like I said with that green rib one, rather than using green plus, which is what all they would have had from the sewing basket, from the white sewing basket. I'd actually used some Goudron, sort of that plastic film that Oliver Edwards used to use for some of his patterns. You know,
Something different.
It's all good fun. As long as you've enjoyed it, that's the main.
Thanks again, Mark.
My pleasure, mate. My pleasure. Nice to have met you all.